After a 13-year absence of making some of the biggest blockbuster movies of all time, last one with Avatar obviously being the biggest, James Cameron's back, and he's finally brought out his first of many Avatar sequels, Avatar: The Way of Water. I had high hopes for this film. I've been waiting for it for a long time. I love the first one. For anyone who's just seen my review of the first one, you will know this. This is one of my big hopes of the year. Along with the Batman, this was probably the film I was most looking forward to. So yeah, James Cameron's back, taking us to Pandora, and this time exploring a more water kind of driven side of the planet. There's a few things I'm just going to go into just at the start here that I'm going to argue off the back that they're not spoilers, because they're all within the first 20 minutes of the movie. It sets up the story of the movie. But if you want to go into it just knowing absolutely zero, which is always the best way to go into a movie, if you've not seen it yet and you don't want to even know anything, you don't even want to know what the setup is, then maybe don't carry on watching. But as far as the story for this film goes, we pick up many years after the original Avatar film, and Jake and Neytiri have many kids. They have quite a few kids, some adopted, a couple are adopted in fact. One of them being a bizarrely kind of born child from the character of Grace, played by Sigourney Weaver in the first film. But the child in this film is played by Sigourney Weaver as well. Not only are they using the technology to make her look like a Na'vi, they are also de-aging her. So yeah, two for the price of one with that one. But yeah, so she's playing essentially the daughter of her character from the first film. We don't know who the father is. We don't know how she became pregnant, but her avatar, it did. It became pregnant, and the child has been adopted by Jake and Neytiri. Another child that was adopted by Jake and Neytiri is a child that was left on the planet when the soldiers and everyone from Earth basically left. And that just happens to be the son of Stephen Lang's character from the first film. So yeah, that really throws a spanner in the mix when that character returns in the form of an avatar. They took his consciousness, put it into an avatar body, and now he's back with a load of people from Earth to take back the planet and do away with Jake Sully and his family. That's the setup. So like all of that you learn pretty early on in the film. Like I say, that's the story, that's the setup. What James Cameron does with that is really where all the surprises lie, and for me at any rate. I know there's a lot of people out there that will say that this film, once again, as with the first one, is visually breathtaking, but it's somewhat lacking in the story department. As with the first one, I do think it's visually breathtaking for sure, but I also don't think it's lacking in the story department. I would say that this movie, while on a bigger canvas even than the first one, given some of the depths of the ocean we go to and various things, I think this is a much more intimate story. It's much more family driven. Obviously it centres around Jake and Neytiri trying to protect their family. You've got a lot of father-son dynamics going on, not just with the heroes, but obviously with the villain. And I just think that what Cameron does is that thing that he's always done, which is to take something that is simple in concept, in the fact that it's a father-son story, in the same way that Aliens is a mother-daughter story, or True Lies is a marriage story. He takes things that we can all identify with, everyday life, and he puts them into a really broad, big, visually stunning canvas. That's what he does. It's what he's always done. But I feel like I can really identify with the characters in this movie. As a father myself, as a husband, there are a lot of moments that kind of hit hard emotionally. Despite the fact that there may be some elements in the story with regards to like that you have a feeling you know where it's going. Although that being said, there are some surprises as well. There are things that happen in this movie that I wasn't expecting, that again hit quite emotionally hard. There is a history in Hollywood of making sequels to films that I love, and kind of you take a couple from the original film and then you give them a family in the sequel. And often when that happens, you ruin it. Now that happened with the Mask of Zorro, which I think is an absolutely brilliant action movie, directed by Martin Campbell. And when they did the sequel, they gave Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones a kid. And the sequel basically revolved around the family dynamics, and it didn't work. It was saccharine. I found it annoying. I often find the kids in those kind of things annoying. They did it with The Mummy as well. The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser one, really great first film. Great kind of relationship dynamics between the two main characters. Second film comes out, give them a sprog, and it kind of ruins it. The family dynamics don't quite work. They try and be a bit too cutesy, and it's just, so the history there is not good. And when we first got the trailers for this, and it's, we saw that Jake and Natalia are going to have a family, I was a bit like, okay, all right, but it's Cameron, I trust him, so we'll see where it goes. Thankfully, he doesn't lean into that kind of history of making it saccharine and annoying, having annoying kids. None of the kids in this are annoying to me. In fact, I actually quite warm to them. I like this family. Stephen Lang's Colonel Quaritch in this film is also deepened here by having this son, learning that his son is still alive, and seeing how he reacts to that. It puts a lot more dimensions to his character. In the first, I loved him in the first film. He was a great villain. He was a scenery chewer, cigar smoking, coffee supping, one-liner spewing badass, and that's all he needed to be in the first film. But you're coming back for a sequel. Are you just going to do the same? Are you going to add a bit more depth to that? And I think Cameron does. He adds a lot more depth to this character, to the point where there's almost some redeeming qualities about him. He's still a badass. He's still an asshole. He's still someone that kind of deserves comeuppance. But there are moments throughout the film where you're just like, there's hope there. The slightest of hopes, the smallest of hopes. But there is still hope there that maybe in future movies, some version of this character will redeem himself. I think there's clearly a lot of questions that are raised in this film that aren't answered, that obviously that is set up for things that are going to get explored in the sequels. Obviously we know Cameron is shooting sequels back to back. If this movie was if it bombed at the box office and they just axed the sequel straight away, I do think it doesn't leave so much hanging in the air that it would become unsatisfying. It stands on its own, as its own movie with a complete story arc for the main characters where, we don't necessarily need sequels to it, but there are questions there where I'm like, okay, I can see where, what areas they're going to explore if the sequels do arrive, which obviously they will. They're filming them already. But I hope this film is a runaway success at the box office, quite frankly, and I've got a feeling it will be. Now, it is 3 hours and 15 minutes, I think it was. I don't think I felt that running time, to be honest. I was too captivated throughout this film. There are moments in it when I am genuinely gobsmacked, where my breath is literally taken away. You look at the production design on this and it's just staggering. It's absolutely staggering. It's beyond beautiful. We're diving into these ocean reefs, these coral reefs with all these amazing creatures in, just littered with all different species of fish, whole schools of fish kind of swimming around, and they've had to be designed. You know, that all of those are effects, and it's just like it blows my mind, and the detail on them is just so real. Like, you feel like you could reach out and touch them. Like, the special effects are just, they're beyond next level. You know what I mean? 20 years from now, this film is still going to look as good as any blockbuster that will be out at the time. You know, just as the first one today still looks as good as any blockbuster that comes out. I've no doubt about it. There's, like, literally, I was sat there sometimes and I realised my jaw was wide open and the corner of my mouth was just going up into a smile. I was just, it's an experience. You know, it does what all great cinema should do, which is really blow you away with visuals. I think it becomes too easy with the Avatar movies to just say, oh, well, they look beautiful, but there's nothing underneath. As if the visual achievement alone isn't something to absolutely shout about, which it is, because it's so immersive. You know, both of these movies really immerse you into the world of Pandora, where when them credits come up at the end, you're like, oh, now I'm back in the real world. You almost want to go back there. It's just that beautiful. So yeah, to dismiss that as if the visuals are some kind of secondary thing. Cameron is taking you to another world and getting you to experience it, to live it. Then he's achieved what he set out to do. I think there's a lot of movie makers who make visual feasts for the eyes with very little story, and actually the visuals, when all said and done, aren't that great. You think of things that Roland Emmerich does. It's all about visual spectacle, but 6 months after the film comes out, it looks dated. What Cameron does is he takes you to another planet and you believe you're there. For those 3 hours that you're in the theatre, you believe you're there. It's no small feat. Now, I happen to think, as I've already said, that there's a lot of story here, there's a lot of character building, there's a lot more character depth for returning characters. So, yeah, I think it's one of those criticisms that isn't going to wash with me, but I think is one that people just easily spew out of the mouth, will easily spew out of the mouth just because the visuals are so good. But you kind of end up doing a disservice to both sides of that argument by saying something as inane as, well, it looks visually stunning, but there's no meat on its bones. Wrong on both counts, I would say. This was an absolutely stunningly breathtaking piece of work. Great characters, great visuals. I was on another planet for 3 hours. Bring on Avatar 3. That's all I can say. I will give this a 5 out of 5 for sure. And I can't wait to go back to Pandora. Have you seen Avatar: The Way of Water? And if so, what did you think about it? Leave your comments down below. Thank you for watching this review. And until next time, cracking.